Good afternoon. As Staff Sergeant DeFose mentioned, I am Assistant Commissioner Rhonda Blackmore, and I'm the Commanding Officer of the Saskatchewan RCMP. We're here today to provide an update on the quadruple homicide that occurred at Carry the Kettle, Nakoda Nation, on February 4th. I will let Inspector St. Germain speak to the specifics of the investigation, but I want it to begin with a few remarks. I again want to share our condolences with the loved ones of the victims and the impacted communities. The long-lasting effects of a loss of this magnitude are not lost on us. That is why investigations such as this are a top priority for the RCMP. From the moment we were notified by File Hills Police Service of a potentially suspicious sudden death on Carry the Kettle First Nation, we sent resources to assist. As it became clear this was a homicide with multiple victims, the Saskatchewan RCMP Major Crimes Unit took carriage of the investigation. We dedicated officers from a number of areas to provide support, from maintaining scene security, patrolling, conducting interviews, liaising with File Hills and Regina Police Service and the Saskatchewan Coroner Service, providing updates to families and next of kin, and so much more. As the investigation unfolded, it was determined the residence where the homicides occurred was targeted, and this was not a random act of violence. As such, we did not believe there to be an imminent risk to general public safety and did not proceed with issuing an emergency alert. Our investigators then focused on identifying the suspect or suspects responsible and determining a possible motive. Today, we are able to announce that arrests have been made in relation to this ongoing investigation. I'm incredibly proud of the work that has been done by our officers and the partner agencies that we worked with. I understand that from the outside it may seem like this wasn't a quick resolution, but I think it's important for the public to realize investigations like this are incredibly complex. They take time and diligence on the part of police. Our investigators have to be incredibly thorough, not only to be able to enact an arrest, but to ensure the work that they have done supports a successful prosecution of the accused. Conducting solid investigations that help bring justice to those impacted by crimes is one of the best ways we can build and maintain trust with the communities and the people we serve. We owe it to those who rely on us as their provincial police service to be meticulous and exhaustive in our efforts. I am confident that is what has happened in this instance, and that is why we're here and able to provide you with new information today. Inspector St. Germain will now take to the podium to provide you with the details of the investigational update.
Voici maintenant la déclaration de la commissaire adjointe Blackmore, commandante divisionnaire. Bonjour. Nous sommes ici aujourd'hui pour faire le point sur le quadruple homicide qui s'est produit le 4 février sur le territoire de la nation Nakoda Carry the Kettle. Je laisserai l'inspectrice Saint-Germain vous parler des détails de l'enquête, mais je voulais d'abord formuler quelques remarques. Je tiens à nouveau à présenter nos condoléances aux proches des victimes et aux communautés touchées. Nous sommes bien conscients des effets à long terme d'un événement de cette ampleur. C'est pourquoi les enquêtes de ce type sont une priorité absolue pour la GRC. Dès que nous avons été informés par le service de police de File Hills qu'un décès soudain, potentiellement suspect, avait eu lieu sur le territoire de la nation Nakoda Carry the Kettle, nous avons dépêché des ressources pour leur prêter main forte. Lorsqu'il est devenu évident qu'il y avait plusieurs victimes, nous avons chargé le groupe des crimes majeurs de la GRC de la Saskatchewan pour mener l'enquête. Nous avons mobilisé des agents de différentes unités pour fournir du soutien. Entre autres, pour assurer la sécurité des lieux, patrouiller, mener des entrevues, assurer la liaison avec les services de police de File Hills, de Regina, du bureau du coroner de la Saskatchewan. Nous avons fourni des mises à jour aux familles et aux proches des victimes. À mesure que l'enquête progressait, il était déterminé que la résidence où les homicides ont eu lieu avait été prise pour cible et qu'il ne s'agissait pas d'un acte de violence au hasard. Par conséquent, nous avons Nous n'avons pas estimé qu'il y avait un risque imminent pour la sécurité du public et n'avons donc pas émis d'alerte d'urgence. Nos enquêteurs se sont alors concentrés sur l'identification du ou des suspects responsables et d'un éventuel motif. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes en mesure d'annoncer que des arrestations ont eu lieu dans le cadre de cette enquête qui se poursuit. Je suis extrêmement fier du travail accompli par nos agents et par les organismes partenaires avec lesquels nous avons travaillé. Je comprends que, vu de l'extérieur, il puisse sembler que l'affaire n'a pas été résolue rapidement. Mais je pense qu'il est important que le public comprenne que les enquêtes de ce type sont incroyablement complexes. Elles exigent du temps et de la diligence de la part de nos policiers. Nos enquêteurs doivent être extrêmement minutieux, non seulement pour pouvoir procéder à une arrestation, mais aussi pour s'assurer que leur travail permettra d'engager des poursuites contre l'accusé ou les accusés. Mener des enquêtes complètes qui contribuent à rendre justice aux personnes touchées par des crimes est la meilleure façon d'établir et de maintenir la confiance des communautés et des personnes que nous servons. Nous devons être méticuleux, exhaustifs dans tous nos efforts pour ceux qui comptent sur nous en tant que service de police provincial. Je suis convaincu que ce fut le cas. Et c'est pourquoi nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui et en mesure de fournir de nouvelles informations. L'inspectrice Saint-Germain va maintenant prendre la parole pour vous fournir une mise à jour sur l'enquête.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Staff Sergeant Desfossé. I'm Inspector Ashley St. Germain, Senior Investigative Officer with the Saskatchewan RCMP Major Crimes Branch. Continued investigation into the quadruple homicides that occurred on Carry the Kettle, Nakoda Nation on February 4th has resulted in the arrest of 2 individuals. Both were taken into custody yesterday, February 18th, 2025. 18-year-old Darius Reset was arrested in Yorkton, and a male youth who cannot be named according to the Youth Criminal Justice Act was arrested on Carry the Kettle. Darius Reset has been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder in the relation to the deaths of 34-year-old Tracy Hodamani of Carry the Kettle, Nakoda Nation, 44-year-old Sheldon Kuzantz of Zagame, Anishinaabeg, 47-year-old Shauna Fay of Indian Head, and 51-year-old Terry Jack of Carry the Kettle, Nakoda Nation. He made his first appearance in provincial court this afternoon. Charges against the youth are anticipated to be laid later today, and we'll provide you with an update with that information as soon as we are able. Investigators are confident that these 2 individuals are responsible for these homicides and that the home where the homicides occurred was targeted. There's been a lot of speculation about whether the individual identified as a suspect in a separate firearms-related incident on Zagame, Anishinaabeg was responsible for the homicides. These 2 incidents occurred on the same day within close time and proximity to one another. The RCMP communicated the 2 incidents together as we wanted to warn the people living in those areas to be aware of any potential threats and to remain vigilant while the investigations unfolded. We did not publicly identify a suspect in relation to the homicides on Carry the Kettle, Nakoda Nation at that time. We understand how the conclusion may have been drawn. However, we want to remind the public that police investigations take time and are often incredibly complex, with lots of new information being gathered rapidly. When we have updates relating to investigations that we're able to release publicly, we ensure that we do that in a timely manner. We thank the public for their cooperation and patience as these investigations were conducted. Officers rely on witnesses and members of the community to come forward with information to further these investigations. I also want to thank all of those who dedicated their time to this investigation. That includes members of the File Hills, Winnipeg, and Regina Police Services, the Saskatchewan Coroner Services, a number of teams and units within the RCMP, including our General Investigation Sections, Forensic Identification Services, Historical and Major Crimes Units, Indigenous Policing Services, the Saskatchewan Enforcement and Response Team, and numerous labs across the country. This was a significant file with a huge number of investigative tasks associated to it, and dozens of investigators have signed. Our thoughts remain with the families, loved ones, and the communities of the victims. They remain top of our minds as this investigation proceeds through its next stages and we work towards a conclusion. Thank you.
Voici maintenant la déclaration de l'inspectrice Ashley Saint-Germain, enquêtrice principale de la sous-direction des crimes majeurs de la GRC de la Saskatchewan. Merci. L'enquête sur le quadruple homicide survenu sur le territoire de la nation Nakoda, de Kettle, le 4 février, a donné lieu à l'arrestation de 2 personnes. Tous 2 ont été placés en détention hier, le 18 février 2025. Darius Rossett, 18 ans, a été arrêté à Yorkton et un jeune homme qui ne peut pas être nommé en vertu de la loi sur le système de justice pénale pour adolescents a été arrêté sur le territoire de la nation de Kettle. Darius Rossett a été accusé de meurtre au premier degré, incluant 4 chefs d'accusation, en relation avec les décès des personnes suivantes. Tracy Ottomani, 34 ans, de la nation Nakoda, de Kettle. Sheldon Cousins, 44 ans, de la Première Nation Zagame, Anishinabek. Shauna Fay, 47 ans, d'Indianhead. Terry Jack, 51 ans, de la nation Nakoda, de Kettle. Darius Rossett comparaîtra pour la première fois devant la Cour provinciale cet après-midi. Les chefs d'accusation contre le jeune homme seront déposés aujourd'hui. Nous allons vous donner une mise à jour dès que possible. Les enquêteurs sont confiants qu'ils sont les responsables de ces homicides et que le domicile où l'incident s'est produit a été ciblé. Il y a eu beaucoup de spéculations sur la question de savoir si la personne identifiée comme suspecte dans un autre incident lié aux armes à feu survenu sur le territoire de la nation Zagame, Anishinabek, était également responsable des homicides dans la présente affaire. Les 2 incidents se sont produits le même jour, à peu de temps d'intervalle et à proximité l'un de l'autre. Nous avons annoncé les 2 incidents en même temps, car nous voulions que les personnes vivant dans ces régions soient conscientes de toute menace éventuelle et restent vigilantes pendant le déroulement des enquêtes. Nous n'avons pas identifié publiquement de suspects en relation avec les homicides survenus sur le territoire de la nation Nakoda de Kettle. Nous comprenons comment cette conclusion peut être tirée. Cependant, nous tenons à rappeler au public que les enquêtes policières prennent du temps et sont souvent complexes, et que de nombreuses informations sont recueillies très rapidement. Lorsque nous disposons de mises à jour relatives aux enquêtes que nous pouvons rendre publiques, nous veillons à le faire dans les plus brefs délais. Nous remercions le public de sa collaboration et de sa patience pendant la tenue de ces enquêtes. Les enquêteurs comptent sur les témoins et les membres de la communauté pour fournir de l'information qui permettra de faire progresser les enquêtes. Je tiens également à remercier tous ceux et celles qui ont consacré leur temps à cette enquête, notamment les membres des services de police de File Hills, Regina, Winnipeg, le bureau du coroner de la Saskatchewan et plusieurs équipes du groupe de la GRC, dont la section des enquêtes générales, le service d'identité judiciaire, le groupe des crimes historiques, le groupe des crimes majeurs, l'unité des services de police autochtones, l'équipe de lutte et d'intervention de la Saskatchewan et nos laboratoires dans tout le pays. Il s'agissait d'un dossier d'envergure qui a nécessité l'attribution d'un grand nombre de tâches d'enquête et la participation de dizaines d'enquêteurs. Nos pensées vont aux familles, aux proches et aux communautés des victimes. Ces personnes demeurent au premier plan de nos préoccupations, tandis que l'enquête passe aux étapes suivantes et que nous travaillons à parvenir à une conclusion. Je vous remercie. Nous allons maintenant répondre aux questions de nos partenaires de presse. Veuillez commencer par 2 questions par agence de presse. Si vous avez des questions en français, l'inspectrice Saint-Germain répondra en anglais et je répéterai sa réponse en français. Veuillez vous approcher du micro un par un pour poser vos questions. We will now take questions from our news partners. Please begin with 2 questions per news agency. Should you have questions in French, Inspector Saint-Germain will answer in English, and I'll repeat the answer in French. Please approach the microphone one at a time to ask question. Let's begin.
Just going to cut in. If we could have our speakers here to be close to the microphone. We're having some problems on our end for the live stream, so if you could just bump it up a little bit, it'll make it a little bit easier for the audience online to hear. Thank you.
Can you say when and where these people were arrested?
So they were arrested yesterday, February 18th. Darius Rossette was arrested in Yorkton area, and the youth who we can't provide any information that would lead to his identity. I can't say right now where he was arrested. That will come out in due course if we're able to release that. And charges will be anticipated to be laid later today.
You mentioned help from the Winnipeg police. What help was that?
So we have a number of different investigative tasks that take place, across the province. In some cases, they lead into other jurisdictions, including other provinces. It's not that far away, so sometimes we may have witnesses, potential people that have information that are going to forward the investigation, and we reach out to those partner agencies to help us get that information from them as close to being able to talk to them as direct as we can.
Sorry if this was covered. The incident that allegedly involved Mr. Panapakisik, if I'm saying that correctly, was it said that a link between the two incidents is no longer being considered? Has that been ruled out?
So at the time this was initially reported, we were considering that they could be related. As the investigations have unfolded, we've determined that those two incidents are not related.
Are you able to say when, during the investigative process, it was determined that there was no imminent risk to the public? You talked about a targeted incident. When was that determination made exactly?
So the determination in terms of doing a dangerous persons alert or an alerting of that kind was made right at the onset of all these investigations unfolding, and it was a continuous risk assessment that we were determining whether there was an imminent threat to the public at that time. So while it was happening sort of at a specific point in time, it was also happening as we continued on. But once we were able to get further information that we believed it was targeted, we did not proceed with the dangerous persons alert at that time.
I'm going to ask my question from here. Sorry, I just have to hold this tripod. What is the relationship between these two individuals and the victims of the homicides?
So the two accused and the victims?
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, I can't comment on the specific nature of the relationship between the accused and the victims. One, I can't provide any information that would lead to the identity of the youth who can't be named under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. But that's part of the investigative process that we're still determining the extent and nature of those relationships.
And the accused, when did RCMP consider these two individuals as suspects?
I can't speak to the specific time that they became known to us as suspects. What I can say is the investigation is dynamic, it's unfolding. There's lots of information that comes in from numerous places. So as soon as we received information that led us to believe who was responsible for, and we were confident that we had the right person, we laid our charges.
And do you mind, just spelling Darius Rossette's name? I don't think we have that.
Sure, yeah. It's Darrius, and his last name, Racette.
Yeah, with respect to the accused who appeared in court, do you happen to know which provincial court that happened to have been? Was it in Yorkton or Regina or where?
Yeah, so he appeared today in Yorkton Provincial Court.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is this the extent of the arrest? Do you anticipate any more charges being laid, any more arrests being made, or are we still under investigation here?
So that's a difficult question to answer at this point in time. These investigations are continuing, they're unfolding. Once we get to the point of laying charges, that's not where our investigation stops. We carry on with further investigations, so at any point in time, we could come across information or be told information that could lead us in a different direction, and that may lead to additional arrests. It could lead to additional charges being laid in consultation with our Crown, but our process doesn't end now that we've got somebody charged and in court.
I know you guys aren't able to give too much information right now, but is there any information you can provide on what kind of evidence was found in the investigations?
So unfortunately, I can't speak to the specifics of the evidence that has been found during the course of the investigation. We do have to have this investigation go to court, and that will be a part of that process for the accused to have a fair trial.
Are you able to speak at all to the details of, like, I guess, the extensive nature of the investigation, like how many interviews were conducted, or, you know, how many police officers were involved?
Sure. So what I can tell you is the investigation has been the top priority of the Saskatchewan RCMP since the day that we became engaged in this investigation alongside File Hills Police Service. Major Crimes Regina, the team here we refer to in our in-house as Team 3. They took primary carriage of that investigation, but they were also assisted by major crimes investigators out of Saskatoon, as well as our General Investigation Section investigators out of Prince Albert, Battleford, Saskatoon, and Regina. We also had assistance from our Saskatchewan Enforcement and Response Team, Forensic Identification Services, Indigenous Policing Services, a dedicated family liaison team to provide information to the victims and their families, and labs across the country along with our municipal partners. What I can't specifically say how many interviews have been completed, but I know at one point in speaking to the investigative team that well over 50 interviews were completed. We have dozens, if not hundreds, of investigative tasks that have been done, and that's anything from video surveillance, interviews, searching for evidence at different locations and houses. So, I mean, I can't, it's a massive investigation, and we're still carrying on today with that.
And the adult that was charged, was he charged yesterday, or was he just charged today?
He was just charged today formally, yes.
You may have already mentioned this and I just missed it. Any information on charges against the youth?
So we're anticipating that those charges will be laid later today, and that they will mirror the charges as have been laid against Darius Reset.
Okay. The age of the youth?
That is subject to, we'll provide further information if we're able to on that particular point once those charges have been laid.
Okay.
Presumably, when those charges are laid, an email might be sent out outlining that information to us?
Yes, we'll provide you with information as soon as we're able to when those charges are formally laid.
The two accused, do they live on Carry the Kettle, or what connection do they have to that community?
So it's subject to the investigation at this time. That'll probably come out in due course with respect to the court proceedings. I can't speak to the specifics, and I also don't want to provide any information that would lead to the identity of the youth.
But you said the underage person was from Carry the Kettle and the other one was from Yorkton?
I believe what I said was the one was arrested on Carry the Kettle.
Oh, okay. And the other one Yorkton area, but
Was arrested in the Yorkton area.
But not necessarily from Yorkton.
Right. Yeah.
And just the relation of the victims, have RCMP determined the relationship between those four people?
Again, the extent of that relationship is subject to the investigation. They were in the same residence, so presumably they do have a relationship of some nature with one another. But the actual extent to that, how well they know each other and all that kind of stuff is very much subject to the investigation at this point.
Are you able to comment at all if gangs or drugs were involved in this crime?
Yeah, once again, what I can say right now, unfortunately, just to respect that investigative integrity, is that is subject to our investigation, and we do believe that it was targeted based on the information that we have right now.